877-3DP Show. Get to your phone calls, as we always do every Monday. Best and worst of the weekend. It was a while back that I mentioned, here's a wild card MVP candidate. Nobody had brought his name up, but watching him play for his team and what he meant for his team, Jalen Carter. And I mentioned it on the show that he's one of those that you don't think of because it's an offensive-driven award. Jalen Carter probably made the biggest play of the game last night. And just that disruptive force there. And he's different because you don't have those he's like old school, his size, but he's a disruptor. And then obviously with Jaden Daniels, I said he's not going to win the MVP, but if you talk about lifting up a culture, he changed a culture that had been there for 2 decades. He gave them hope. And it's not about numbers. It's just when he's on the field, he gives you hope. You have a chance. And that's why I thought, I hope he's a top 5 MVP candidate, certainly with what he did in the regular season. All right, we got football tonight, national title game. Ryan Clark, he's got a busy week coming up. You got to talk football, and then you got to talk about college football. His son is playing tonight in the national title game. He's also got NFL Live duties as well. How nervous are you?
Oh, I'm freaking wrecked. It's kind of it is, we got opportunity to play 2 Super Bowls as a family, but these last few weeks have been absolutely amazing. To, see your son sort of live a dream, see your son make a decision that was tough on him in the offseason. He wanted to stay at ASU. He felt like that's where his loyalty should be. I can be honest, as parents, we thought it was best for him to leave, and we had those conversations. And when he kind of finally acquiesced to what we wanted and started to take trips when he chose Notre Dame, I was elated. It was my dream school. But, in week 2, when they lose to NIU, and then as the season goes along and Arizona State's playing extremely well, you're like, holy hell, did we make a mistake? Did we push him into something that's not going to be positive for him? So for him to be in this moment, having beaten Georgia, having beaten Penn State, and now an opportunity, in my opinion, to play the most talented team in college football, but certainly the most talented group of wide receivers, knowing the way that they're going to play. I think it's just been an amazing year, an amazing opportunity for him to show who he is, but as a team and Marcus Freeman and what that school has been, the tradition in which Notre Dame plays with each and every week. It has really been one of the best experiences of my athletic career. But to see him do it, as a parent, there's nothing better.
More likely to talk to him more today or less likely to talk to him today?
No, we don't change anything, DP. Like, that's the cool part about having been through it as a father, and my wife having been through it as a wife, and now going through it as a mother. Like, we understand what happens. He kind of dictates how much we talk, how much we see him on game weekends. And the one thing for him, he's like, Pop, I don't want to change a lot because it's the championship. And so we got an opportunity to visit with him last night. Thousands of parents and families and friends were there also with their loved ones from the team. And he honestly stayed and talked to us longer than he normally does. So he got to see some family members he hadn't seen in a while. But today he said he's going to wake up with no clock. He'll go to walkthrough, he'll take a nap, study film, and then he'll be ready to go. We have a ritual, and this will be the last time we do it. I always wait in the same exact spot for him before every game. And it started last year where I just write him a little note. I thought last year would be his last, but he ended up getting injured and coming back. And so this will be the last time I get to do it. I'll do it from the field because it's obviously an ESPN game. But for me, it's like it's the best part of the day. I get to hug him. I get to tell him I love him. I get to hand him over a few words he gets to read before every game. And, this will be our last time doing it in college ball.
Going to have a lot of emotions there.
Yeah, I'm going to cry.
I
didn't cry.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't. Dan, like, as a player, like, honestly, when we won the Super Bowl, I didn't cry. When we lost the Super Bowl, I didn't cry. I've cried more in these last 3 weeks than I'd like to admit, which I am admitting to you now publicly. But I think it just shows you how much it matters, how much different it is.
But your son's going against some pretty good wide receivers.
Yeah.
I would think you've had conversations on, Dad, what do you see?
No, Not really. It's been a cool evolution of his playing career. We were driving in the eighth grade. I forget where we were going, and he turns to me and he's like, "Pop, I'd love to play a college sport." And at the time, he loved basketball too. I was like, "Well, son, it ain't gonna be basketball. I've seen you do that. I was like, you can play that to have fun." And I said, "And it's gonna have to be a defensive back." And he's like, "Well, why? I play wide receiver too." I was like, I've been around those guys and I've watched them catch footballs. It's like it's just different. I said, but I can help you be a defensive back. And he broke his ankle probably 6 months later playing basketball. And so we kind of had to rehab him back from that, get him prepared for his sophomore year. Went to a really competitive high school. And I mean, man, we slept in some of the worst hotels to go to some of these football camps. We have been on planes, we've driven, and it was just that journey. And so every high school game in sophomore year, I'd grade the film, I'd grade every play, and we'd watch it together. And then the next year, I'd grade every play, and he'd watch it by himself. And so it's kind of evolved. Whereas to now, like he's his own man when it comes to football. If he asks me a question, I'll answer it. But a lot of times, he's telling me what he sees. He's telling me what he has to do. He's telling me how Al wants them to play. And I think it's just the coolest thing in the world.
He's Ryan Clark in the mothership, won a Super Bowl with the Steelers, and weekdays 4 Eastern on NFL Live. I was just talking about the Ravens. All season long, I said, I don't care what you do during the regular season. I want to see what your game plan is going to be in the postseason. I want to see if you stay with what made you successful. You got a great running back, and you didn't stay with that running back in the second half, a running back who was really good in the second half. They had one drive, they scored. I'm just trying to understand the philosophy of the Ravens and why it seemed to change a little bit yesterday against a Buffalo defense that I thought you could run against.
I thought early on they didn't have the sort of success they wanted to have. And when you go throughout the season with Todd Monken, that's what we've seen. There are the games that Derrick Henry doesn't rush for 100 yards, they don't win. And I think people try to correlate that to continuously or consistently giving Derrick Henry the ball. But I think also in those games, he didn't start out with early success. And so without that early success, when they go to 11 personnel, which is three wide receivers, or 12 personnel, which they love to use Isaiah Likely in that way, it becomes a Justice Hill game a little bit in the pass game, or it becomes a Lamar Jackson drop back pass game. And I think even with Derrick Henry not having early success, I thought in the second half, he put his imprint on the game. Like, that's not why they lost, right? You go to the first half, and it wasn't the interception by Lamar Jackson. I think they went 3 and out after that, but it's the big fumble on the DeMar Hamlin tackle with the return by Von Miller. It's the fumble of Mark Andrews when you have an opportunity to score. And then, as great as Mark Andrews is, we all expect him to catch that pass on the 2-point conversion. And so, yes, I think the Derrick Henry piece of it is huge, but I thought he did enough in the second half to help his team. I thought Todd Monken turned to him in the right situations and during the right scenarios, but it's about making plays. When Bernard punches that ball out from Mark Andrews, that's making a play. Yeah. Mark Andrews didn't just drop that. And then obviously you have to catch the ball on the 2-point conversion as well.
Is Josh Allen consciously more cautious or aware, yes, like situational football? We always talk about that, but he just seems like, hey, I normally would try to do a little more. Feels like he's got maybe a seatbelt on, and it's a wise thing. Is that conscious?
Yeah. And, I don't even know, DP, I don't want to call it a seatbelt because people will say, or they'll think it's a negative thing. And what you're saying is true. It's positive. He understands, let's not go lose the game, right? When people talk about him not winning the MVP last year, they always point to his stats, saying how much better they were than Lamar Jackson. But he also had 18 interceptions. And that was a way to hurt his team. This year, he cut that number down tremendously. But when you watch him, he's taking what the defense gives him. If it's a 3rd and 4, he has no problem only getting 5 yards, only getting 6 yards. He's not trying to take the shots down the field. He's playing with the level of efficiency and impatience that matters. But to me, also, like a joy of not being sort of forced into doing certain things to get people the ball, not doing certain things to prove a point. He seems extremely relaxed and comfortable in who he is and who he's playing with. And because of that efficiency, because of that patience, because being of playing risk averse, that's why this team wins this football game. One team turns the ball over, the other team doesn't.
More surprised the Ravens lost or the Lions lost?
Lions, Lions. And it's like this weird thing because when you think about all the defensive players the Lions have lost, it makes total sense. Amik Robinson, who had been playing well on the outside, he gets hurt very early on in that game. And so it's not one of those things where you're like, oh, you know, there isn't a reason why they couldn't get stops defensively, but they had been losing all those people the entire year. Most of those players weren't available against Minnesota when they took them to the woodshed in a winner take all game in the last week of the season. And so it was surprising to see just how bad they were defensively, but also the turnovers and interceptions by Jared Goff, which truly caused them the game. Because when you think of some of the games they had to win down the stretch without those injuries, it was because the offense was unstoppable and the offense protected the ball. They didn't do those things against Washington, and it cost them.
The public perception, national perception is Mahomes gets calls that other quarterbacks don't get. As a former defensive player, your thoughts on that topic?
Well, I think a lot of quarterbacks get calls that they shouldn't get, right? I think there is a conscious effort to protect quarterbacks at all costs. And officials are humans, Dan. They just are. Like, they know which ones are different. We felt the same way about Tom Brady, right? And we weren't wrong. Think about it. When Tom Brady gets hurt in the first game of the 2008 season, there's an entire rule built around the way he got hurt, right? Which still stands today. You can't hit quarterbacks below the knee. And so there are these quarterbacks that are treated differently. I think when you see it on display at in such a large stage in slow motion, it feels to us like, oh, okay, that's just a bad call where they're cheating from Mahomes. But the Will Anderson play, we look at it and we go, in slow motion, like, yeah, he definitely didn't hit him in the head. When it's happening in real time, what does the official see? Right? You go back to Sam Darnold getting his face mask, like basically taken off against the Rams throughout the season. We're like, well, how do you miss that? So maybe that's one of those things with Mahomes. The one that pained me the most was when he's running around. He doesn't really slide. He just kind of gives himself up, and these guys are trying to tackle him. He's playing freaking dipsy-do with the linebacker on the outside and jumping around and cutting back in and holding the football. You can't call that. You can't give them 15 yards, and you can't give them an extra set of downs, and they end up scoring a touchdown on that drive that essentially makes it a two-score game. Those calls have to be reviewable. If you don't want to review them during the season, that's fine. But you can't put a team like the Houston Texans that's scrapping and scraping and clawing to stay in the game with the two-time defending Super Bowl champions in that sort of situation, to where you can visibly see D'Amico Ryans biting his tongue after the game to not say he felt cheated.
I don't know if this analogy works for you, but later in Floyd Mayweather's career, it wasn't about trying to knock you out. He was just going to play defense. He would outsmart you. Patrick Mahomes is not blowing you away with stats. This isn't 45, 50 touchdown passes. It's I'm just going to kind of spar with you. And then you're going to make one or two mistakes. You leave Kelsey open. We're going to score. My defense is really the calling card of this team. I don't know if you see that, but I was kind of feeling like Mahomes at times doesn't seem like he's like, oh, I got to worry. It's, those times when I do have to worry, then he always delivers.
Yeah, I think that's the key with him right now. This man has shown up so many times in critical situational football moments that he expects to, his team expects him to, hell, the other team expects him to. And when we saw him get into trouble was trying to relive those 45, 50 touchdown days without having 45, 50 touchdown people to throw it to.
Yeah.
And I think he's had to make that adjustment. I mean, Dan, like we all have an ego, right? Like we all feel like we're good at certain things and we want to be sort of seen and perceived that way. And for Patrick Mahomes, he was perceived and seen as the best quarterback on earth. And you want to be able to push the ball down the field. You want to be able to show those skills. But right now, that's not the way they can win football games. And ultimately, as you begin to win football games and you're no longer having sort of the statistical output that you used to have, but people are still saying, yeah, but you're the guy, right? Yeah, he won't win the MVP this year, but everybody's chasing him. You start to realize that actually winning's more important than anything, and that's what he's doing.
Are you sitting tonight watching this game?
So I didn't sit the entire second half of the Penn State game. I stood up the entire game. And so I don't know. I like to call myself like a calm dad because I really am for the most part. In high school, I didn't say much. Throughout all of his years in college, I didn't say much. I kind of set off by myself and watched the games. But it's been impossible for Georgia. It was impossible for Penn State. And it'll probably be impossible for Ohio State tonight. I mean, hell, what I'm saving it for. This is my last day as a college football dad anyway.
Good luck to mom, too. I mean.
Yeah, she the second half of Penn State, she just cleaned out her email. She said she's like, I can't watch anymore. Like this game has her watch kept telling her heart rate was high. And so she's like, yeah, I'm gonna clean out my emails. And so I don't think she has any emails to clean out tonight, Dan. So maybe I'll just give her my phone because I have like 11,000 unread ones.
Oh, you're going to be a mess. Hopefully in a good way. Hopefully a mess in a good way. You
know what's crazy, Dan? Like at the end of the game, you love all those moments, all those tense moments, all those stressful moments because you win. If you don't win, then it's just 3.5 hours of your life, that you felt like you were going to puke.
Good luck. Thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Man, thank you so much, Dan. You have a great day.
That's Ryan Clark. His son Jordan's a safety for Notre Dame. It's Ohio State and Notre Dame in the title game. We'll come back. We got our play of the day, your phone calls, best and worst of the weekend. Steve Young, next hour. We're back after this.